Chapter 6. Ultimatum. This was getting ridiculous. Sana pulled out her umbrella and whacked at a tree branch that was reaching for her, then flicked a neon pink gecko that was nosing around her feet into the roots. It shrieked and skittered away before they could impale it, but fell over dead before getting more than a yard from the plant. Sana didn't feel too bad for it. It was a member of a biologically engineered invasive species with the approximate lifespan of a mayfly. It didn't even have the reproductive capabilities to support its ridiculously high death rate, since the doctors designed all of their creations sterile or solely male. The only reason the things were still kicking around was because they kept being released for some reason. Sana didn't want to know. She flared her umbrella at a few more geckos, only winced a little when one got run over by a car, and smacked half a dozen more tree branches before making it to the relative safety of the library. It was practically abandoned. Only Mr. Allgood, Cam, he'd told her Cam was fine last month, the librarian, was visible on the first floor, and while this was the kids and records section, she doubted the rest of the place was any better. She gave Cam a nod, and he responded with a tired wave. She headed past him and up the stairs. The second floor was as abandoned as the first. Sana checked around anyway, just in case, then headed for the section on glassworking. There wasn't a lot, but she needed the excuse to keep coming back, and a shield in case anybody was looking too closely. Her real aim was the computers. She dug out a book on glassblowing, then grabbed one about the Warren disaster, her latest super-related rabbit hole, and snuck off to the computer bank. What she was doing wasn't illegal, wasn't even all that weird, but doing it made her skin itch and her jacket thrum. The cocktail of guilt, fear, and adrenaline it gave her was a heady mixture, and an addictive one. She opened a web browser and searched superhero news. The first few results were news reports about the ongoing controversy surrounding the superhero Starblast's arrest of a mugger. Something about excessive force. Starblast as a whole was kind of a disaster, as several articles pointed out. He had a bit of a history with anger management issues, and he seemingly refused to adjust to Earth after his exile from his home planet. Some writers used his actions to insinuate that extraterrestrials should not be out on the field, unless under the supervision of Earth-raised heroes. Sana clicked out of those articles. There were plenty of decent heroes from outer space on the planet, ones who didn't deserve to be degraded because of one guy who couldn't get over himself. After a few more articles and news clips, an underground prison for supers that probably violated half of the Declaration of Human Rights was being built somewhere, there had been an arrest of a supervillain who'd tried to flatten Kansas more than it already was by the federal team, a delegation from a galaxy previously believed to be devoid of life was visiting the White House, even odds on them being interplanetary conquerors in disguise. Sana narrowed her search to Calabria Super News. Things hadn't gotten worse over the weekend, but they hadn't gotten better either. The park had lost ground to the geckos, whose bites could apparently poison the plants, but the little corpses were turning up close to the water tower. Some fancy jeweled egg had gone missing and was being ransomed back for 5,000 dead geckos. Huh. The local windmill farm had managed to reboot one of the turbines that had been knocked out of commission, but the gas station on Westview Street was still trying to replace the dispensers. No reports of hellhounds, nothing about Lord Static's death. There hadn't been anything for a month now, but she still kept an eye out. No sense in being blindsided. She scanned through a few articles about modern dance and watched a few routines, then erased her search history twice and skulked off to the teens section. It had the best view and the best seating. The teens section was as empty as the rest of the library. Sana weaved around the stacks and beanbags that littered the floor to reach the tall windows at the back. She looked out over Calabria and saw more than a few destroyed buildings, a block of vegetation centered on what used to be the park, and bundles of smoke over by the car dealership indicative of a recent fight. Probably pulse and flight risk. Maybe Faye. Tough to tell. The ruin wasn't as bad as the pictures and news reports she'd seen of Boston following the Warren disaster, but it was getting there. Too much longer and Calabria would be uninhabitable. Sana stifled a whine and dug her nails into her arms. The jacket buzzed under her fingertips in a pattern that would have been soothing if she wasn't already keyed up. Instead, the stimulation was nearly unbearable, and she tore the damn thing off. She threw it to the ground and walked as far away as she dared, then found the nearest beanbag inside cardiac arrest range and collapsed onto it. It didn't make her feel much better. The texture of her sprawl support was too reminiscent of the incident, but it remained solid under her, so it was fine. She was fine. She closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths, but kept one hand clenched around a $50-sized glass sun catcher she'd tossed in her pocket before leaving the house. Sleep was out of the question, not like she could manage it anyway. The nightmares still happened, but they had faded after a couple of months. The beanbag wasn't all that uncomfortable either. No, the bigger problem was her distance from the nanotech. There was an itch that wasn't crawling under her breastbone, the product of being too far away from all of the bots. She was okay as long as a few were within grabbing distance, but if they were all separated, the mild side effects would start. They were mostly tactile things, an itch, a tingle, a tautness in a muscle that didn't exist in the conventional sense. Any further than that, and, well, Calabria's war wouldn't be bothering her anymore. The sunlight crept across the floor until it hit her eyes, and she groaned. She just wanted to dissociate for a while. Was that too much to ask? Apparently, yes. She rolled over and stretched out before forcing herself to stand. Blood rushed out of her head, and she wobbled over to her curse and threw it back on. She gave the windows one last look before collecting her books and heading to the checkout desk. Cam lifted an eyebrow at her selection. "Have you checked this one out before?" he asked as he scanned the glass-blowing book. Sana shook her head and leaned both hands on the checkout counter. "Nope. I got the book from the same series about glass fusion. The tips helped me make this, actually." She pulled up a photo of a red and blue glass charm on a bracelet. The charm was split in two, with specks of blue in the red half and specks of red in the blue half. Black specks could be seen in both parts. Cam leaned in for a better look. "Nice job. Ever considered selling those things? Seems like you made a new one every time I see you." "I want to do so for a living when I get out of school." She picked up her books and tucked them into her bag. "I'm not good enough yet. I only have a year of experience with glasswork. Plus, I need to work on larger projects in 3D stuff, lampshades and whole windows." "Ever consider setting up an online shop?" Cam asked. "You could use it to get rid of some of the ones you don't want to keep and make some money while you're at it." She tipped her hand in a so-so gesture. "No opportunity. School's kind of a time suck. And nanobot training, and dance lessons, and hand-to-hand with her dad, and... Fair." He glanced out the window and grimaced. "Do you need to call somebody to pick you up? It's not looking so great out there. You might get hurt." She brandished her umbrella and gave him a maniacal grin. "The foliage and the lizards can try, but they won't win." "Uh-huh. I can take on a bush." "I believe it." She leaned in and said in a conspiratorial whisper, "I can take on a tree." The spark in her eyes would not inspire confidence in her mental stability. "Please do not fight a tree." Cheerful cackling rang through the library as she left. The way back home was more difficult than the way out. Sana was skirting what had been the edge, but the park must have grown again. The geckos were less prevalent now, but she had to kick some more aggressive roots away, and leaves kept falling on her head. She finally managed to fight her way past Faye's territory and stumbled into the sunlight. She wasn't all that far away from the alley where Lord Static had died. She shuddered and turned on her heel, fully intent on taking a more circuitous route if it meant she could avoid the alley's mouth. That plan blew up with the street. A rumbling crash reverberated around her, and the windows of the buildings in front of her shattered. She threw up her arms to cover her face and felt tiny shards of glass bouncing off her jacket. Once the immediate danger had passed, she peeked out from between her arms to see someone surrounded by his own personal blizzard standing on top of a crashed car. There had been a pile-up in the middle of the road. People were fighting their way out and running away, but Sana could see someone lying limp in the driver's seat of one car and the passenger seat of another. She cursed, pressed the emergency button on her phone, and wove through the crowd away from the attack. This was not something she could deal with. The loon in the shiny duds laughed and waved his hand. The snowflakes blew away and flew straight at the crowd. They formed a wall between Sana's chunk of the crowd and the rest of it. A white cage formed from the flakes, which were a lot larger up close, around Sana and 3 other people, the ones she was closest to. She felt her blood freeze. It was the same way her own tech turned into a jacket. Moments later, a chunk of glass and concrete speared the sidewalk where Sana would have been. Everyone else kept running, and soon the whole street was clear. Sana grimaced, forced down her racing heart, and examined her fellow captives. One was a brunette in a button-up. He was doing his best to calm down another prisoner, an older woman who still seemed fairly spry. The final prisoner was a tall, middle-aged man with a prosthetic leg, scarred cheek, and tan. He gave Sana a once-over. "Bad luck, kid. Want me to get him for you? He'll probably send you home." Bad luck? That was understating it. If this guy was who she thought he was, she was going to die. He absolutely could not come over here and look closely at her. "My luck's no worse than yours, and I'd rather not." He might snag somebody else or disregard the rule about kids. "Any idea who he is?" "No, but I know what he is." "What is he?" "Moron." She snorted despite her bone-numbing terror, and he cracked a grin before sobering up. "Here he comes." He lifted his arm, and Sana slid in underneath it. A fake parental relationship could go a long way in keeping hostages safe, and there was nothing like mortal danger to make friends fast. That, and any protection, was good protection right about now. The moron, who Sana could now see was wearing a fluttery white cape, purple and gold domino mask, wiry golden crown inlaid with purple gems, calf-high brown boots, and purple poet shirt with white and gold embroidery strutted towards the cage. So, not only was he an idiot, he was a show-off. Fantastic. He approached the cage, hands on hips. "Hello there," he said, as though he was starting up a conversation with some friends. "Apologies for the cage, but I needed a couple of—" "Oh, goddammit, you're not an adult, are you?" He'd caught sight of Sana. Crap. If she didn't pull off the act of a normal hostage, she was dead. Wordlessly, she flashed her student ID at him, careful to keep her thumb over her name. He groaned and buried his face in his hands. He was wearing silver gauntlets for some reason. He dragged his hands down his face and said to himself, "Okay, I can work with this. Look, I need a couple people to stir the rumor mill. I was going to rough you all up a bit, spread some terror, but I can't exactly do that to her." He gestured to Sana, who fought back a flinch. "Without bringing down the wrath of the rest of the supers and breaking my own code, I'm not about to beat up an old lady, and 2 people aren't enough. So here's plan B. You all sit tight until the news crews get here, then I'll let you go so you can run away in terror to set the mood. If you tell people I nearly killed you in the process, so much the better. I won't actually hurt any of you unless you do something stupid. Got it?" Everyone in the cage exchanged looks, and the man holding Sana to his side nodded sharply. "Deal." He looked past the moron's shoulder. Sana followed his gaze and saw EMTs extricating the car crash victims. The moron also looked, but dismissed the sight. EMTs had immunity while on the clock. At least he seemed to know the rules of super fights. He turned back to the current leader of the hostages. "It should only be a minute." That said, he lifted his arms, grabbed invisible bars, and made a pulling motion. The cage moved forward, and everyone inside staggered, though Sana had to force hers a bit. The enhanced proprioception from the nanotech had really done a number on her sense of balance. The man in the button-up sat first, and everyone copied his lead for the rest of the relocation. It didn't take long, though the stop and start made the old woman a little green around the gills. The end destination was the center of the street, right next to the cars. Once the cage was positioned to his liking, the moron mounted a car, then the cage. 30 seconds later, a news crew and police car showed up. That was the moron's cue. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to deliver a quick message.
Release the hostages!
One of the police demanded through a megaphone. Was that Detective Valentin? He paused, though Sana couldn't see why. She hoped he wasn't going back on his word. He wasn't. These? Sure, you can have them. The bars at the front of the cage turned into bots, and everyone inside took the opportunity to scramble to relative safety. Sana stayed close to the man with the prosthesis, and the other man kept by the old lady. The moron didn't even wait for them to cross the line indicated by the police car before continuing. My name is Prince Snow. I stand here before you as Lord Static's rightful heir, but I am facing a grave insult. My mentor's technology has gone missing, as I'm sure you all know. Those bots belong to me by right, as does everything else that was stolen. Oh no. Sana stumbled, but her partner in flight caught her and all but carried her the last few yards. She gave him a grateful smile before they were bundled off to separate EMTs to get looked over. Prince Snow made a complicated hand gesture, and the bars of the cage dispersed from the top down, lowering him to the ground slowly. He jumped off once he was close enough and snapped his fingers, whereupon the rest of the cage disintegrated. Sana could only watch with envy. That kind of control was nigh impossible. I am well aware that there was a thief at the scene of my mentor's death, and the police have clearly failed to find him. He hasn't made a debut yet, so I can only assume he's a coward. But even cowards come out of the woodwork if their house is on fire. He smiled cruelly. So, to the little rat that stole from a dead man, I'm offering you a deal. If you come out of hiding and give me what is rightfully mine, I'll let you walk away. If you don't, I'll tear the city down until I find you, rip my inheritance from your hands, and kill you and everyone you love slowly. You have 3 days. I suggest you make this easy. He gave the audience a cold smile and twirled a finger. The white bots converged around him in a swirling tornado, then lashed out, shattering the cameras. He then strolled down the street until he was out of sight. Sana shivered, but luckily the EMT checking her took it as a reaction to the cold stethoscope she was using to check her blood pressure. It didn't take too long for her to give the all clear, though she did hand Sana a couple of band-aids to be on the safe side. The officers asked her to give a statement at the station, but she declined, and because her parents weren't there to give permission, they let her go home without too much hassle. She did her best to appear fine until she was out of sight, at which point she sprinted for her house. She slowed down when she was through the door and dropped onto the couch with a groan. Bread, the little opportunist, decided it was a great time to take a nap on her chest. Garlic gave him a side-eye from where she was curled in a ball on the other end of the sofa. She then went back to her nap. Smartest person in the house. Sana gave Bread's forehead a kiss and smoothed down the fur on his back. He purred in contentment, and Sana pulled up a news site on her phone. Video of Prince Snow's debut was probably up by now. She had to watch it and see if she could learn anything. The chill that built in Sana every time she heard the declaration was only slightly milder than it had been compared to listening in person. She shut her phone off with a shaking hand after the second fruitless playthrough and fumbled for her suncatcher. The floral-textured glass felt good on the side of her fingers, and the ridges and points of the amateurly laid solder caught on her skin to ground her with pinpricks of pain that didn't draw blood. Bread's cool fur under her other hand provided a calming counterpoint. She had to think. This Prince Snow guy was a threat, a serious one, but he didn't know where Sana was, and he had no way to find her, seeing as how he had to lure her out. Hell, he'd seen her face to face and been completely ignorant. If she kept a low profile, she would be safe. It's not my job to stop him, she thought. It's not on me what he chooses to do. He's just like any other supervillain. He wasn't, but she had to believe it, or else she'd do something stupid, reckless, illegal. Was it illegal? She knew breakaways had to have at least 3 years of sidekick experience, and sidekicks had to be at least 18. but she wouldn't have a mentor. She couldn't be a sidekick. How old did homegrowns have to be again? She slapped her cheeks and shook her head. What was she thinking? She wasn't vigilante material. Not even close. Self-defense and sparring with her dad would only get her so far. She couldn't even form constructs yet. Doing this would kill her. Not doing this will kill other people, that traitorous voice in her head whispered. Your inaction has already killed people. How many more are you going to let die? It wasn't her fault. She'd been doing good by keeping the nanotech away from the ongoing war. It wasn't her responsibility to throw herself in the line of fire of situations she had no part in creating. Her own nanobots thrummed, and Bread let out a grumble of displeasure until she calmed down enough to neutralize them. The break gave her time to think more clearly. No matter what she did, she was making a bad choice. So which was worse on the whole? Doing nothing. Better one person get hurt than many. But was going out to fight crime legal at her age? She'd gotten adept at navigating the digital archives of state and federal laws over the past few months. Muscle memory guided her to the sections on superactivity, then she read through each line by line. Once she reached the end, she blew out a breath, rested her hand on Bread's back, and closed her eyes. She had to talk to her parents. She left the phone open to the web page that sealed her fate. Nowhere in either federal or state laws was there a minimum age for homegrown superheroes.